Previously on Turtle Learns Game Dev.
For simplicity's sake, when I refer to turn-based combat, I'm talking about where one side is given a turn in which they do some form of action. Once they've completed their action, and thus their turn, it then goes to the other side, and they begin doing their action, and then rinse and repeat. Just to clarify, this is not the only form of turn-based combat. There are some that incorporate real-time elements to provide more tactile feedback, mechanics that require timing and rhythm to make the most out of your actions, or an active time battle where there's a gauge that fills up over time, and once it's filled, you may take your action. So as you can see, there's a lot of variety in turn-based combat, but that's enough yapping. It's time to show what I did for the project. The story for this project is I, Turtle, have been kidnapped by a seagull, and my friends Barry, Pickles, Big Blue, and KP have to rescue me by battling the seagull. I based the game off of Tomodachi Life's Tomodachi Quest. It is a very simplified Final Fantasy inspired game that fits the theme I was going for. The fact that it's so simplistic with no fancy mechanics making things complicated means that I can't possibly screw it up. For this project, modularity was the name of the game. Reusing as much code as possible, hopefully making my life easier in the long run. With that in mind, I started with making a combatant class that everyone, enemies and allies, was derived from. I also implemented some basic resources for the combatants, which I used to hold their stats, textures, name, and RPG class. Having these combatants use resources allowed further modularity, which was good, that's the whole plan. At this point, I started attaching the UI to the combatants, having their HP, MP, and action buttons displayed to the right of them. I then did the logic for the essentials like calculating health, damage, yada yada. I left out some functions because I was still figuring out how I wanted them to work, but I placed the combatant in the main scene and look, there's probably something I'm missing, but at the time, I didn't know what to do, so I decided to switch my combatant from a Node 2D to a texture rec since I know how to scale those things correctly for the most part. I should probably look into how to scale things properly since every project I do have issues with scaling in UI. It was at this moment where I decided to remove the stats and actions from combatant and just have them in the main scene. That way there would only be one set of buttons and the stat block would line up with the characters. This took a while to get everything looking right because once again, UI is not my strong suit, but we got there in the end. With the UI pretty much done, it was time to get into the nitty-gritty grind that is coding. In order to get the turns and timing right, I used the await keyword, which basically pauses the function until it receives a signal telling it to continue. Now that's all well and good, but I ran into an issue where some awaits were getting skipped if I used them in nested functions. To get around this, I simply didn't put them in there. It did limit some dialogue ideas I had, but oh well, it's working now, so that's pretty good. Okay, so as I was editing this video, I figured out what the issue was. I had both functions awaiting the same signal, meaning they both continued at the same time, which is why it seemed like the nested await was being skipped. Whoops. The next issue, and the one that definitely took the longest, was implementing attacks, specifically the special attacks. The boss was actually easy to implement as well as the player fighter and warrior, but the magic users on the other hand were a pain in the booty. The mage sniper wasn't too hard. Once I figured out the MP system, it was also pretty simple. It was specifically the cleric that was annoying to get right. The cleric's special action is supposed to heal the party member with the lowest HP that isn't at full health. The problem I ran into was the cleric would heal the mage instead of the other characters because their current HP is higher than the mage's max HP. Or another issue was the cleric would try to heal a fainted character, which he isn't supposed to do. Once you're fainted, that's it. But after fixing all the issues, the game was pretty much done. Okay, not really. I didn't put any sound effects or animations, so it's pretty bare bones, but that's as far as I wanted to take it for this project. And I started this project with the intent of modularity and reusability, which I think I did pretty well in the beginning with the combatant and resources. Unfortunately, the further I got into the project, the more things I had to change until, well, Reusability was the last thing on my mind. And there was even stuff like misses being calculated as 0 damage, which I thought was a bug at first, and crits not being conveyed well to the player that I had to just accept unless I wanted to spend the next couple of days rewriting everything. But I just wanted to do other projects, so I left it as is. Well, that's it for today. I know my upload schedule has been pretty poo, but I do plan to upload more videos going forward. Easier said than done, so we'll see how that goes. Well, I'll see you next time, probably. Bizzles.